We are live. All right, folks, just streaming this into our Fix and Flip Foundation group. Bear with me here. It looks like we are live in there as well. So I'm going to back out of that. I see folks checking in. Let me know if you see and hear me in the chat. For those that are here in the Zoom itself, if you're working from a Zoom link, you should be live. You should be able to engage with us in the chat. Making sure that yes, okay, making sure we can all comment there. So let's do a test. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so checking the tech, making sure everything is good before we jump in, because you never know, right? So if you're here and you're live in the Zoom, so you'll be able to kind of engage with us and the dialogue in the chat. So comment there. And if you're over on Facebook, this is streaming there. The link to get into the Zoom and comment and engage with us is in the comments there. So encouraging you to scroll down, click on that, jump in here live. If you're here live, be here live. Right, that's part of the value of doing this exercise. In the meantime, letting folks trickle in. This is the first training of the new year. So we're focusing on project management mastery. Ideally, when you come away from today, you're going to understand the methods, the processes and systems that you need to manage multiple projects. You're going to understand how to manage communication around that, what you're tracking and where you're tracking it, how those communications are happening to make sure that you're efficiently managing projects on time, on budget. And then finally, who, like the who and the how. We're going to talk about both, but then we're going to close with the who. And it's that person in the field that's going to be responsible for ensuring that your projects come in on time and on budget, and then what you're going to be tracking, what the KPIs are, how you're going to hold that person accountable to make sure they're hitting those metrics. So those are the three elements. I'm going to unpack those some more when I jump into the slide deck, but just wanted to give everybody a chance to chime in. I see we've got a bunch of people in already. All of those that are on the Zoom, I can see you. And if you're in the Facebook, the team is in the comments there. And so hopefully they'll be able to engage with you. I won't see that. So again, encouraging you, click on the link in the comments on the post and jump into the Zoom if you're not already in it. Again, if you're going to be here live, right? Like be in the room with us. So let's jump right in, and I'll share my screen. So we'll jump into a present mode. And so you should all be looking at this deck. What I cannot see are the chats. So I'll jump in and out, and I'll do my best to engage in the chats. If you have questions, drop them there. When I pause, I'll jump in and out and be able to answer those questions. Conversely, we'll have time for questions at the end. But if you've got a burning question and you're worried you might forget it, then drop it in the chat. Hey, John, I see you. Eddie, see you. Mike, I see you. Thanks for chiming in, guys. Anybody else that's here, chime in the chat. Let me know you're here. Your names come across. Some of you, I see your contact. I see where you're from. So really cool. Amanda, I see you as well. Thank you for chiming in. Kyle, what's up, buddy? Good to see you. Evan in the house. Wilbur in the house. Thanks, guys. Awesome. I'm excited. Now they're coming in fast and furious. All right, guys, let's do this. All right. So again, the theme of our talk tonight is project management mastery. Ideally, how do you get this thing scaled? How do you get systematic about running multiple projects? How do you build a business out of this, essentially? So we're going to talk about the methodology, processes, systems. I already alluded to that. Communication, how are you managing? What tools are you using? What things are being communicated to make sure that the stuff is happening? And then who's being held accountable? That's the who. We talked about that, and we'll unpack that last. Methods, systems, and processes. So we're going to talk about our proprietary system for managing projects. I'm going to allude to a lot of these. If you've been on these trainings before, you will have seen Trade Tracker. You will have seen the milestone template, right? These are Tools we often rave about because they work, frankly. So expect to see those tonight if you've seen them already. So the phases, right? The trade tracker, it's essentially a visual representation of what's actually going to happen in the field in a very concise way that you and your team can look at. Here's a bigger version blown up with the section that matters for our talk tonight highlighted, right? So we know that there's phases chronologically, things are going to happen over the course of a project. And specifically, there's these 12 core trades that are going to be responsible for doing a majority of the work, right? That's where a lot of the value add takes place. There's a lot of ancillary trades. You see those here highlighted in light green, and you see those 12 core trades in darker green in those 4 boxes. That's how projects get done. That's who ultimately stands up these bigger projects, especially the add levels, the additions, the new construction type stuff that we advocate for, that like we coach our students on. Like that's mason, frame, windows, doors, like insulation, drywall, floors, the MEP, right? Mechanicals, your plumbing, your electric. So you see all that highlighted here. And if you work chronologically through this timeline, you will start and you will soup to nuts build a house. Essentially, that's what this is for. And that's why this resource lives in our office, lives above the whiteboard where our project manager refers to it every day, right? Because this is what drives his or her efforts in the field. So critically important that you have a version of this in your business. And this is ours. And again, the heart is there because this is the beating heart of our operation. And then we'll talk a little bit about the steps per the templates, per the milestone templates. This is the not the trades, but the actual steps that those trades are executing to, and that your project manager, your GC, your site supervisor is going to hold those trades accountable to making sure that the things happen in the order they should be happening in. And so this this milestone template lives above the whiteboards where all the projects are tracked in our offices, right? This is the document that's referenced most in our Slack channels for the projects. And we'll go a little bit deeper on them, but here's what it looks like. And then jump into the actual milestones. The ones highlighted in red are opportunities to document the journey. That's why those are there. And want to take advantage of what we're already doing. You've heard me say this if you've been on these trainings. Anything worth doing is worth documenting. So be documenting your journey because that documentation, that accountability, you putting that out into the market creates credibility. Folks seeing you doing this work, you showing them signage in front of your projects, you receiving permits, you getting demos started. These are steps that you ought to be documenting, putting out, in turn building credibility and organically generating you deals in dollars. That's the beauty of this, right? You guys have heard me say before, organic versus paid marketing. Anything we're doing is worth documenting. It's essentially a way of chronicling your journey and sharing it with potential investors, but also sellers, right? Like someone who's looking to sell their house wants to trust that the person that they're selling it to is going to execute. They're a proven operator. And so if you're out there doing the thing, then people will believe that you'll do the thing, and then those opportunities will find you. So that's part of the reason that we advocate so heavily for this, right? So that's just an aside, but just be mindful of like the methodology, the processes, the systems. It's tracking the trades, it's working to milestones, and it's pushing projects along. And we'll talk about that in the next section, how we do that with communication and our software, and also who we hold accountable to that. And then here, just threw these in as bonuses. Again, we are extremely conscious of the process, documenting it and tracking it and knowing that like, hey, there's a set of steps for everything, right? There's a set of steps for the rehab. We just showed you what the rehab milestone template looks like. There's a set of steps for when you buy houses. There's a set of steps for when you sell houses, right? So tracking these steps and having them live somewhere, these actually live alongside our office manager's desk and in her Slack channel, right? Where she can reference these as we're making new purchases, as we're selling out of our finished products. So when I say the methods, the processes, the systems, this is the level that we're talking about. This is how granular we'll get with it. And deeper than this, even outside of these, 3-4 documents we're sharing with you inside of our Kajabi, we've got 40 downloadable resources. So you can imagine that we've got templates and worksheets and matrices for everything, right? And encouraging you to dig deeper on that. And a lot of you already have access to those documents. You've seen a lot of those shared here in the group. For those of you that are in the group, you've seen that stuff shared here. We often have those in the files section, right? So if you haven't gone there yet in the group, go there. There's a ton of free resources there for you guys. And then let me pause there. I'll jump back out for a quick second. I'll field any questions that we have regarding the methodology, regarding the processes, the systems, the milestones, and the trades and managing those before we jump into the communication practices. Any questions, drop them in the chat, and happy to answer them as we, as we jump back in and as I get a sip of water. We got folks from all over today. This is great. Metro Detroit, Miami. I see a lot of folks chiming in with where they're from. If you didn't, drop that in the chat as well. So Amanda, how long did it take to develop these systems, these processes? So the beauty of these is that they're proprietary. They actually evolved over time. As we were doing these types of deals, we were scaling our business, we realized that we were doing a lot of the same things over and over. And so it just made logical sense that these things would evolve into a system. Anything you're doing more than once, like, get systematic about it, start writing down the steps, ultimately like build it into a process, and an SOP, a standard operating procedure that you can then deploy in your business and scale, right? You can replicate, you can actually assign that to someone, which we'll talk about, as we go a little bit further in the deck, and you can actually build a business, right? You are not your business. You don't have to work in your business. You can work on and ultimately above your business, which is what we advocate for and what we teach. Wilbur, is there a specific team member that manages the milestones? Yeah, this is a super question, and it's actually where I'm headed. So I'll jump back in the slide and in the deck, and you'll see I'm going to actually answer that question as we go a little bit deeper here. Let's go. Okay, so we're back in this deck, and I'm going to jump into communication, and I'll probably roll straight through from communication into the accountability piece. That'll answer Wilbur's question, and then we can break for questions at the end. These two sections blend really well into one another. So communication, is it standardized? Is it centralized? What are you doing to make sure that everybody's on the same page, essentially? This is critical to successfully managing multiple projects, to building a business out of this and not just flipping one-off projects. So we talk about the tech stack, the tools that we would use. You see the clock, right? Because it keeps us on time, and you see the dollar, it keeps us on budget, right? So these are, cheeky little graphics, but they're there for a reason. We want to come in on time and on budget. How do we do that? We leverage technology. That's what it's there for, right? We don't have people texting one another all throughout the day, things getting lost in translation. Like that's not the business we're in. We use Slack, which you see here. It's the top Slack. That's what keeps us on time. That's what's ensuring that we're not losing any days in the field, that if something's happening, it's being communicated to the team via Slack, which is a tool and Monday, Asana, these are other similar types of project management tools. We use Slack. That's why I advocate for it and I share it here. That brings you, that's the time piece, making sure that we're on time, managing to the timeline, communicating what's going on in the field to the rest of the team. So if something does need to be remedied, it can be addressed. It doesn't sit and it doesn't go day, turns into 3, turns into a week, right? And then at the bottom, builder trend or co-construct. When it comes to the dollars piece, like we're tracking on time and on budget. When it comes to the budget, these are two really robust tools you can use. You don't necessarily need to use these if you're not there in your business yet. I would argue that if you don't have 8 to 10 projects going a builder trend or a co-construct might be more than you need, right? You can get away with a simple QuickBooks, or if you don't need that, you could just use Excel. But Excel is laborious, whereas QuickBooks is a little bit more streamlined. And so I think a happy medium for most folks on this call is to just get a QuickBooks account for each of your projects and have all your spend tracked through there. Be consistent about reviewing P&Ls, right? Finance Friday, it's cheeky, but it works. Use Finance Friday, commit an hour each Friday to truing up your spend on your projects, review your P&Ls, make sure you're on budget. Don't go 3 weeks, 4 weeks without looking at your spend and then wonder why your account's zeroed out or you bounced the check. And here's the meeting cadence, the timing with which the communication is happening. So you've seen the tools we've talked about using a Slack or a Monday or an Asana or Builder Trend or even just QuickBooks to track, the budget and the time you're spending on project. Like how tactically now is that happening with your team? It's all about a meeting cadence. And those of you that are familiar with Traction, you see the book over my shoulder. It's about the vision, the people, the data, the issues, the systems and processes, but then the traction, then getting the traction when you're executing on all that. That's what a meeting cadence essentially is. It's daily stand-ups, right? It's your team talking through what each one's working on each morning. And just as an aside, they're called stand-ups because we encourage people to stand up like I am right now, because when you're standing, you're less likely to drone on. You're going to be very succinct because human nature is you want to sit down. So you do daily stand-ups, keep them to 15 minutes, make sure that everybody's communicating only what they need to for the rest of the team to understand what they need to do their jobs. No more than that. Any more than that, that's an offline conversation. And then the weekly huddles, that's where each person will stand up, and specifically your project manager, which we'll get to in the next set of slides. That's where your project manager is going to stand up and talk to you about what's going on in the field with the project itself. And we'll talk more about the KPIs, but again, daily stand-ups, weekly huddles. We don't need to go much deeper here on monthly, quarterly, and annual. That's more about truing up with tradesmen in the field, making sure that they're being recognized, making sure that they're being communicated with. If your framers left the job site and now it's time for your mechanicals, your MEP, so you're going to have a plumber and electrician and they're going to be there for 4 weeks. You don't need your framer on site, but you still need to be talking to him, right? If 4 weeks from now, he hasn't heard from you and you're calling him to come back to do your blocking and your boxing, he's not just going to have a day waiting for you, right? Ideally, at some point, like over the course of that month, he's moved on to other jobs. You or your project manager or your site supervisor, somebody ought to be talking to him saying, hey, we're about to wrap up MEP. Can you put us on for a day next week or 2 weeks from now to come back in and do all the blocking and boxing, right? That's why it's important that you're truing up and having this monthly dialogue with your tradesmen. And we'll jump to the accountability piece. So this is where we'll jump in and actually answer Wilbur's questions. Let me back out again in case there are some other unrelated questions, and then I'm going to jump in, and that's when the accountability piece comes in. That's the who I alluded to earlier. So any questions here regarding the communications, what tools we're using, what tools you ought to be using, and then the frequency with which you're having these conversations with your team, drop them here. Again, I'll use this opportunity to get a sip of water, but happy to go deeper on any of those themes. Yeah, John, I see same question regarding team roles. So Wilbur, John, in this next set of slides, we're going to definitely get right into that. And you'll leave tonight with clarity around who you need on the team to scale this thing, which is, again, one of the goals, right? What's the methodology? What are the systems and processes? How are things being communicated amongst the team? And then who are the critical players, the who's, that are going to make this happen? Yeah, Wilbur's excited, man. Yeah, let's go. Let's hit it. I'll jump right back in. This is the stuff, like right here. This is how, and I'll keep the chat open. So since this is the last section of slides, as you all comment, I'll be able to engage with you. So, right, we talked about the the how, and now let's talk about the who. And if you haven't read that book, highly suggest checking that out, right? Because a lot of times you're not the who. You understand the how, and your role as the entrepreneur, business owner, leader is to find the right who's to sit in those seats, which if you look here, right people, right seats, that's what we're talking about. And then who in your organization is going to be responsible for project management specifically is what we're talking about today. So in your organization, you may be wearing multiple hats. You might be the visionary, you might be the integrator, right? Your CEO and your COO. You might also be some of these roles. These are your three critical roles. Your project manager, your office manager, and your marketing manager. You might be wearing a lot of those hats, but just understand that it's just your picture in each of these spots, right? These spots, these seats still exist, and someone needs to sit in them, whether it's you now or whether it's a fully built out team. Just understand that these are the critical roles. These are the critical functions. And specifically, we're talking today about project management because that's how the effort in the field is driven. So that project manager, call them a GC, call them a site supervisor. People have a lot of different names for the same role. We call them project managers. And then what are their core responsibilities, right? The function of project manager is responsible for LCA. We call that leading, coaching, and holding accountable. That is their number one responsibility because they need to lead, coach, and hold tradesmen accountable, right? If there's no one driving these efforts in the field, that list of trades you saw early on in the presentation, they would be running amok, right? They need some sort of direction, and that's your project manager or your site supervisor, or that might be you, right? In some scenarios, but someone's got to drive that effort. Someone needs to be the leader. Someone needs to coach these folks, and someone needs to hold them accountable, right? Make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is the whole challenge. And we'll talk about how we do it and how we encourage others to do it. Project timeline and budget. We alluded to this a bit earlier. When we have our daily stand-ups, when we have our monthly huddles, this is when the project manager shines. This is when they stand up and say, okay, I'm X% complete on 123 Main Street. I should be X% plus. I should be that we're 70% of the way through the project. We should have been 50% of the way, but we're really crushing the timeline. The weather's really with us, whatever the case is, they'll be reporting in on that. And then the budget, those numbers don't lie. That spend, if you're truing up every Friday, the way we suggested, you'll know what that spend looks like and be able to have that conversation with your project manager. We had budgeted 40,000 for framing. You came in at 52,000. How did that happen? Like, clearly you'd have caught that the week it happened. But you need to be having these conversations. And if you're not, it's far too often investors get to the end of a project, and that's when they do the math. That's when they check if they're on budget. And of course you're not on budget if the first time you're looking is at the end of the project, right? Other responsibilities that are the job of the project manager: vendor management, maintaining relationships with vendors, with tradesmen, with the people that you'll buy your lumber from, you'll buy your masonry, your plumbing, right? Like all of that rough materials, they need to maintain that relationship. Client satisfaction, also important, because if you're going to sell this product in the end, which as investors, that's most of our intention, is to maximize on outsale, sell the finished product. We are fortunate, and a lot of our students as well are pre-selling projects constantly. So when that's happening, the buyer is working with your site supervisor, project manager to get this thing to completion, to make some of those selections, right? We're often offering them the ability to make some choices, which is, a conversation and a talk for another day, but just be mindful that client satisfaction is your project manager's job. And then inspections, that's another measurable that we're big on. We're not in the business of failing inspections. We don't call for inspections if we don't pass inspections. That's just, okay.
Could you try again?
Siri's chiming in. She wants in. This is a one-man show, Siri. Oh man, too good. So inspections, we are not in the business of failing inspections. We wouldn't call them in if we didn't anticipate passing them. The unfortunate reality is that a lot of times that responsibility is left to tradesmen. There is no point of contact on site, no project manager, no site supervisor. What winds up happening is tradesmen call in inspections when they feel like they're ready. The project's not ready, right? A framer calling in inspection because he's under the impression that he's ready doesn't necessarily mean that you're ready to pass all your roughs, including framing, right? So someone needs to be lead, coach, and help and hold everybody accountable, LCA. And that's what the project manager, that's your who for that. So we'll talk a bit more about that. It's actually the final slide. And field practices, we talked a bit about this already, just how critically important that daily and weekly, that your project manager is touching every project, whether like that's physically in the field, checking on tradesmen, ensuring that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, that they're there, right? Frankly, that's a big challenge. A lot of folks often bring to us, right? Our tradesmen say they're going to show up, they don't show up. My plumber said he'd be there, he's not there. Well, there's a method to getting them there, right? And it starts with you and your team, right? Your culture is speed to lead, no lost days, right? That's our culture. And so our trades, when they come on our jobs, when they find their way into our world, they expect that, right? They expect that if they're not on site, the day they said they'd be on site, our project manager is going to be on top of them. We don't let days turn into weeks. So daily touch every project, whether that's physically, if those projects are local, if you're farming your local market, or if that's digitally with cameras and technology makes all of this very possible. And I know some folks on this call are doing renovations outside of their farm. And if you're out of state, that's where you would engage technology. But again, touch the project every day, somehow, some way. And then weekly, we've already alluded to why it's so important to do Finance Fridays, why it's so critical for your project manager to make sure that the trades and that the vendors give him the invoices in plenty of time for the office to process checks. So that way, all of that, like all of those payables can be accounted for. And then we're getting true figures every Friday on where we stand on our projects. Again, ignoring that, it's one of the easiest things to not pay attention to, but it's one of those things that comes back to bite you in the ass at the end of a project when you had modeled in $106,000 net rehab profit and you come in the 50s, like clearly you weren't tracking. There's no way you're going to come in 50% off of your projection and be managing that weekly. That just doesn't happen. You would take corrective action earlier. And that's what we're trying to encourage here. And then again, we talked a bit about the KPIs and how we track what we track. It's two things. I won't belabor this. I want to leave room for questions. This is its own talk. We've done this on separate trainings where we talk about the scorecard, what KPIs, what we measure for each of the roles. For each of these roles, we'll focus like we are today on just project management and just what percent complete are we on each of our projects. The project manager comes in and reports that. We are, like I suggested, we're 70% complete on a project that we should only be, or we were only projected to be 50% complete on. We're actually ahead of schedule, or the opposite is sometimes true. We're 70% complete. We had mapped this out. We should be somewhere in the 85 range. We had a delay. We had the lumber yard sent us the wrong windows for the openings. We had to make a judgment call in the field, decide whether to open up the enlarge the openings or reorder windows. And like those are the kinds of things that could create a delay. Again, if you're on top of it and if you're tracking progress, those are things that are quickly remedied. Those aren't things that just break the machine. They're things that you address, pivot, keep moving. So project percent complete. And like I suggested, we're not in the business of failing inspections. You shouldn't be either, right? It's important that we call in inspections when we're ready for inspections. And we pass them because the worst thing you can do in a town specifically is to start failing inspections and get known as that investor that isn't ready and then get blackballed and then have to fight for the next appointment, right? If you can, call inspections, get inspections, pass inspections, you're going to be infinitely more successful in the eyes of the town, in the eyes of your lenders, ultimately bringing the product to market faster and converting to dollars quicker, and ultimately being able to scale and repeat this process, which is what we advocate for. So I know we went through a lot of that super quick, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I want to also offer like an opportunity to do breakouts on this, to go deeper on this. If any of what you saw tonight, whether it's communications related, or it's the methods, the processes, the systems, the trade trackers, you want to go deeper on that stuff, like these 35-ish minute talks are not nearly enough time for us to really unpack that. We do a lot of that inside of our accelerator. So if you want to go deeper, comment accelerator, whether it's in the chat here on Zoom or on Facebook, and then we'll reach back out and we'll set up a time to go deeper with you guys on that stuff. Happy to unpack the trade tracker and a lot of those tools, and how we incentivize our project managers, right? How our org chart is structured. We just frankly don't have a lot of time on these calls to go that deep. So again, comment accelerator in the chat, and we'll connect offline. In the meantime, let me jump out of a screen share and let's field a couple of questions. Again, I want to know where you're most challenged, what you want to focus on around managing multiple projects, and then communicating processes, the who, right? So any questions around any of that, feel free to drop them in. We've got a few minutes and I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah, Bill, John, thank you guys. I see you guys commenting, accelerator. So we'll reach out. Mark, I see you commented as well. We'll connect with you guys and we can go deeper on a lot of this stuff. But in the meantime, I'm hopeful that just understanding that there's these like core components that if you can dial in, and if you're intentional about building out like a system and a process, you can scale this thing. You know, and when I say this thing, I mean a fix and flip operation, and a big one, right? One that consistently generates 6 figures, doing big add levels, additions, new constructions, the type of projects that that we do, that our students are doing all over the country, the types of projects with big spreads that afford you the flexibility to actually build and scale a business, right? Think about the who's, right? How are you going to afford to hire some who's to support you in your business? That org chart that you saw, project manager, office manager, marketing manager, there really isn't a world where you can scale and hire in that help doing cosmetic rehabs, right? There's no number of $17,000 rehabs that you can realistically do that is going to afford you the ability to then go higher, right? You just can't scale that way. And if it were possible, it'd have been done. The reason it doesn't happen is because the numbers, the math just simply doesn't work. You want to scale a fix and flip operation, the way to do it is to net fat 6-figure spreads, make 100K, go hire like an office manager and a project manager, make 100K, go hire a marketing manager, go outsource marketing, make 100K, go hire a CEO, COO, right? An integrator, head of operations, go hire support for your team, right? That's how you can build and scale businesses. That's in the fix and flip space. It's how we've done it. And it's how we advocate that all of our students do it. And so I hope that resonates with you and you understand that the traditional house flipping model is dead. That's just not how you build and scale a fix and flip business. That's how you moonlight as a rehabber. That's how you do a deal a year to kind of stay busy on weekends. And that's not what we're talking about here. A few questions, sure. So how do the trades, now the questions are coming in fast, I'm trying to keep up. How do you manage the trades getting in each other's way? Yeah, so the trade tracker is critically important for that. Keeping the trades and the timeline, right? Chronologically, you know who's coming in what order. You're getting on their radar early enough where they can see the project, right? You're not, that example I gave earlier with a framer, you're not just calling someone and saying, hey, we need you to come back on site tomorrow. Like, they have to have heard from you weeks before. You've got to be on their radar. And tradesmen really respect that. And so if you're giving them notice, you're inviting them to the project long before they're expected to be there to work, they get an opportunity to see who's already there working. They start to embody the job, right? It feels as if it's their work, although they're not even starting for 2 more weeks. So the trades start to get to know each other. They start to work. They respect one another, right? They hand off the baton cleanly. as opposed to just doing their part. That's not my job, right? That's you guys, if you've been running projects, you might have heard that's not my job, or they just throw their hands up, right? That's not, we don't have those are those are C player tradesmen. We create an environment that attracts A player tradesmen, and A players don't say that's not my job. So encouraging you to do that, to really manage that way. We're starting in the business. How do we build project management? How do we build a management project in real estate? I think it's project management in real estate is what you're getting at. And if so, it's these templates, it's these systems that I shared, right? Like I said, we shared 4 out of 40 that we have in the Kajabi that are in the Facebook group, right? There's far more than that we actually use to run our business. And to Amanda's question earlier, these things evolve over time. And so now we're happy to help you turn decades into days, right? Like we're offering you the shortcut. We already did it the hard way. Don't reinvent the wheel. Rip off and duplicate R&D, rip off and duplicate. Implement our processes, our milestones, our systems in your business so you can get further faster. That's how I'd answer that question. So, but again, comment below if you want someone to reach out to you. Remain, and we'll be happy to do that. Mark's got a jump. Oh, no, Builder Trend. Yeah, I know. So Mark's referencing Builder Trend. I talked a little bit about it. We've demoed Builder Trend. We've demoed Co-Construct. We've worked with them. What we found is unless you're doing enough projects, and large enough projects, I should also say, which it takes a lot to outgrow a QuickBooks, they're too robust. And for us, it felt like we were managing the management and not the project. We were managing the management of the project because the software was so robust, and we weren't managing the project as well. And so that's why we've come away from Builder Trend and gone back to QuickBooks. So, but yeah, Mark, great point. And for some, it makes more sense, Oh, Wilbur, yeah. How to afford the headcount. We talked about that. Like, you got to do the big spreads. You got to do the big deals. You have to net the 6 figures. That's how you can afford to bring on these employees, because understand that the employee is actually 1.25 times what you're paying them, right? So if it's a $40,000 FTE, full-time employee, it's actually $50,000, right? Plus bonuses, plus all these other things because of payroll taxes and such. So, how do you hire, find trades you can scale with? Yeah, A players, I already kind of alluded to that. John, hate that phrase. It's not my job. Throw my hands up. I know that's the one he's talking about. Everybody hates that phrase, except the people saying it. And those are C players. That's why they say it. Yeah, what do I wish I knew when I first got started? Great question. I wish I knew that the team was the key. I wish I knew that that org chart that you saw, that I didn't need to leave my face in every one of those bubbles any longer, right? We had done deals, we had done 6-figure flips, netted like 100K on a project, and I was still wearing all the hats. That was silly. Once you're locked in a 6-figure spread on a deal, make that first hire. Do the next deal, make the next hire. That's it. That's how you scale. And I didn't know that early on, and did far too much on my own and slowed my growth. So again, another opportunity I'm hoping you all will take advantage of. Turn decades into days, go further, faster, avoid my mistakes. Yeah, okay. So some of these comments encouraging the team to connect, right? So thank you for commenting. The team's going to be in the chat and in Facebook as well. And yeah, one last question. How early should you have your material schedule done, and no for delays? This is a good one because we just came out of COVID times. So a lot of you that have been in this space for the last couple of years know what happened with materials and delays and how long it was taking to get stuff. That has softened a bit. Those timelines aren't what they used to be. They aren't what they were during COVID times, but still there's delays. And what we advocate for is plan review, another call all in of itself. It's actually a call we do with our accelerator every other Tuesday. We do a plan review call where we go through this exercise, and and it's meticulous, right? We're reviewing the plan. We're looking at what needs to be ordered, exterior doors and windows for the project. How far out are they, right? What's the lead time on them? Are we making sure we're ordering them in plenty of time? So when the framer's done framing, they've cased the openings. Now they can just put the windows in because the windows just showed up. And that's the kind of stuff we do in the accelerator all the time. It's just, the answer to that question is really it's material and it's location, geography specific. If you're going to be closer to the mills in Canada, your lumber's coming right to you, right? If you're down about where we are or even further, like that milled lumber is got to go further to get to you, right? So it's just, those are the kinds of things that you need to kind of adjust for, and every market's different. And we work with people all over the country who have completely different lead times, right? Some of the windows are manufactured in your backyard, so you're getting them to your job site in a week, whereas some of them have to go across the country and it takes longer. So anyway, that's to be expected, but again, to be accounted for. So let me wrap there. We're at 6:40, just perfect timing, right? I hope to keep these things to 40 minutes each time. We had a ton of engagement in the chat today, which is really great. Hopefully I was able to get to everybody's questions. I was trying to keep up. They started coming in a little bit quicker. And Siri even jumped in, which was fun. So that's the beauty of lives. And so, these webinars aren't pre-recorded. So, all right, guys, thank you for engaging. Thank you for being here. I do not take your time for granted, and appreciate that you were here. Hopefully brought you a ton of value, hit it right out of the gate, closing strong. The team will reach out to you if you've commented here. Look for us to connect, and I'll see you guys on next week's training. In the meantime, stay engaged in the group. We'll be dropping more stuff over the next couple of days, more trainings, more resources in the file section. So stay engaged in Fix and Flip Foundation. All right, guys, have a great night.